Greetings and welcome back to the Casual Wargamer. This past weekend, I attended another 2K event at our local game store. Very long day. It seemed to really overrun a little bit, but absolutely top-notch gaming. So I can't complain. Unfortunately, I missed out on the event in September. Partly because of doing the 2-day tournament I spoke of in a previous video, and also those annoying, horrible people at work booked the day off before I did. How rude. So I was back in October, trying something a bit different. I like to play my Marines very shooty. They are Imperial Fist successors, so they should be shooty. But it tends to mean that I end up with a lot of models sat in the collection that don't do anything but gather dust. So I thought, let's try it. Let's go for a list. It's not going to do very good. It's going to do awful, but at least I feel that I've got some money's worth out of playing these models. So I took the Judiciar. I think this is probably the first time I feel, maybe second time I fielded him in 10th edition and gave him the honour of Vehement, because I went for the Gladius task force rather than the shooty one. I thought, we're going to go melee this time. We're going to show them what we can do. And I had him with 6 Blade Guard, trundling along in a Spartan to run out and smack things. I took a Librarian in Terminator Armour to lead my Terminators. Normally, I like to take a Captain as my Warlord, but actually looking at it, I realised, the Librarian in Terminator Armour is actually a potentially better option, giving everything sustained hits for free. So he went in. I took a Techmarine with the Artificer armour upgrade to basically keep the Spartan alive. And he sort of did his job. And I took a Lieutenant with Combi-weapon. Never really does much cop for me. I kind of feel that, by himself, he's not doing an awful lot once the game gets going. So I don't know whether I'm going to bother fielding him again. And I don't think you get enough shots out of that Combi-weapon to be worthwhile. However, Lieutenant Kevin, as he was named, I'm sure I've ripped that from someone else's channel, did actually survive a lot in this. He pretty much got down to 1 wound most of the time and then just went, I passed all my feel no pains. So I can't fault him. I think he only died in 1 out of the 3 games. So, but I don't know whether I'd bother with him. I think he went in simply because of points. As for BATTLELINE, I'm a big fan of taking BATTLELINE. I ended up going with a 5-man heavy intercessor squad with a heavy bolter, sit on my home objective. Normally I use that for a basic intercessor squad, but I thought a little bit tougher, might be able to hold them off a bit. And then I went, right, 10 Assault Intercessors, 2 squads, revving those chainswords and running up the table. They can take a few losses, but when they hit, they should be able to do all right. And yeah, they do all right, but not as well as I had hoped. But at least, again, they got some use. I went with 6 aggressors, the bolt storm ones, which to my mind are the only ones worth playing for the most part. I know some people like the flamey ones, and I guess if you're salamanders, that's great. I don't rate them. I like the shooty potential that these guys put out. Again, this particular game, they didn't do very well at all. I just don't think they had the opportunity to use their skills. 3 Eradicators come in from Strategic Reserve, pop off any monsters or vehicles. And dusting off something that hasn't been seen since 8th edition on my gaming tables, 2 Vengeance Weapon batteries with Punisher Gatling cannons. I thought these things have been sitting in the cupboard for years now, for the better part of probably 7 or 8 years. So I thought, let's pull them out and have a bit of fun. And I've got to be honest, they didn't do amazing, but they actually did, for me, probably 2 out of the 3 games actually did make a slight, what's the word I'm trying to use of? They didn't make their points, as they like to say, but they did actually do a good job in whittling down numbers. Especially when things started to try and get into my deployment zone. So that was my list. So how did it go? Well, first game was against Tyranids with an invasion fleet. and let me just find where I've put it. Oh, typical, I've closed the window. Bear with me. This was Dawn of War, Stalwarts, Taken Hold. I got to be honest, this was not a great game for me. Pretty much the Tyranids were sitting there with the big shooty artillery beasts. I want to say exocrines. You know the ones I mean. The big chunky boys with the big cannons. I'm sure it's exocrines, but my brain is not working today. And they were simply popping off anything that was in sight within range. I did my best to kill them, and I'm not even sure they stripped many wounds from them. Even the Spartans struggled. And unfortunately, they were very fast, and the Tyranids swarm basically hit my lines and basically locked me in my deployment zone for the most part, while they ramped up the points. Generally, I felt I couldn't do a lot about this particular game. It just was not going my way. And my opponent took a very nasty 89 win to my poor 19 points. It just did not work. Sometimes you get that game, and this was it. Good fun, though. It's nice to see that sort of Tyranid list actually getting played. I don't see Tyranids for ages, and then all of a sudden they hit you like a London bus, and there's loads of them. This was a good game. The second game was against a Space Marine list, White Scars. Young man I often play against in recent tournaments. He took them as a Gladius task force as well. Now, unfortunately, this particular game, we got about turn 2, I think it was, when he suddenly realised actually his list had an Imperial Knight and he forgot to bring it. And he hadn't finished his list building. He was still missing about 250 points that he hadn't considered. So he was running less than the 2,000 points. We managed to find a suitable replacement model, so of the right size, an Invictus Warsuit, so that could be the Knight. But rather than be down points, I went, well, my aggressors are 240 points. We can leave them back at base, and we've got an equal game. It seemed only the fair way to do it. This was not a particularly high-scoring game. We were playing, where are we? Where's my list gone? This was Hammer and Anvil, Raised Banners, and the Ritual. So this was going to be a little bit awkward. I'm not a big fan of the Ritual. It's a pain in the bum to do. But basically, I got out there first, created one, and my opponent took a little while longer to get going, but he managed to set up 2 objectives. And then I started plinking his units off them. And early on, we both lost each other's tanks. I blew up his Land Raider, his Vindicator, then took out my Spartan, and it didn't take much for me to basically go, I'm not worried about the Vindicator, I'm just going to take out your little squads, because they're the ones being a nuisance. I kind of felt a little bit bad, because he didn't have the best of luck. His dice were fairly pants, and I think he probably didn't have the right tactical mind going into this particular game. You've got to know what you're doing with a Ritual to try and make it work. And I only sold victory 44 to 35, so neither of us did particularly well on secondaries or primaries for that. But he's always a fun opponent to play against, so, you know, unfortunately he went for 3 losses in the day, which I felt a bit bad for him, really. But sometimes that's the breaks. Now, the last game, this was against Eldari. This was a new player who I've not faced before. I kind of get the impression that he hadn't played for a long time. His models were the very old metal ones. Some of them, the bases were tiny. Even I don't remember the bases being quite so small back in the day, but there you go. And this was a sweeping engagement with hidden supplies, Scorched Earth as the primary. Now, this game was very typical of what happens to me in games. Started off doing quite well. I was plinking off a few things. I lost a few models here and there, but I was plinking off a unit here and there. I was taking out vehicles. I was doing all that good stuff. We kind of deployed pretty much all mine was on my left, all his was on his right. Like we were playing opposite corners for some reason. No one really seemed to push anything. Oops. No one seemed to push anything else, and we sort of drifted into the middle. Unfortunately, I was doing really, really well up until that halfway point, and this always seems to happen to me in a lot of games. I find I do well up until like turn 3, maybe 4, and then it all goes completely wrong. In this instance, his avatar came out, Wraith Lord, what was in the Phoenix, Fire Dragons, and that was it. Boom, I was being blasted off the table far too easily. It was just a dice game. He had some tough stuff for me to deal with, and I just couldn't quite do it. And he took a nice win, 77 to 46. I'm not complaining with that. That got me above my minimum that I try and go for in a game. And it was always nice to play against a new opponent. You always get sort of like a fresh feel, and it's kind of, you don't feel quite so like you're playing the same people all the time, which can sometimes get a little bit not stale, but sometimes you want to freshen it up a little bit, and getting a new opponent is always good. And generally, I don't see Eldari on the table as much as I used to. Since they've been more rebalanced, no one seems to really want to play them anymore. Although we did have another Eldari player. Just find my list here. Where are we? Yeah. Middling of the table for both Eldari armies. I came 7th out of 8th. The day was won by my first opponent, the Tyranny player. We also had 1,000 Suns, came 2nd place. Dark Angels were 3rd. Eldari for 4th. Tyranids 5th. Then Eldari, me, and then the White Scars at the end. Really good game, really good day, I should say. Did kind of feel that we really dragged on a bit. I don't know whether games overran or we started late or what, but it really, really felt like a long day. I was really knackered by the end of it. My brain was dribbling out my ears. You know how it goes. But yeah. Always nice to get a day's gaming in. So I'm happy with the results. I'll take a win, 2 losses. If I get 1 win in a tournament, I'm happy. But all good games. I'm not going to bother with the Assault armies in future. I might use them as a side piece. But I certainly prefer my Marines to be a shooty army. And I think I do slightly better, right? I think I do slightly better with a shooty army than I do an assault-based one. But that was an interesting tryout, fun list. Can't complain. So there you go. That was my Saturday. Well spent. In the doghouse a little bit because we overran quite so long, but there you go. Anyway, thanks for watching. Any comments? I'll pop the list down in the section below. If you have any thoughts, good or bad, pop them down and let me know. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Coming soon. Take care. Good gaming.